Ryan Cox and Ariana Hayes had always been the couple people pointed to when asked if true college love still existed. They met freshman year in a crowded lecture hall, drawn together by late-night study sessions that soon turned into long walks across campus and shared dreams about the future. By the time graduation arrived, their bond was unshakable. Against cautious advice from family and friends, they married young, believing their love was more than enough to weather the uncertainties of adulthood. Ryan wasted no time building his career. With sharp instincts and endless determination, he launched his own marketing firm, pouring long hours into securing clients and establishing his reputation. His ambition made him one of the most promising entrepreneurs in his circle, though it also meant sleepless nights and weekends spent buried in strategies. Ariana, equally determined to carve her own path, accepted a position as a junior corporate lawyer. Though she was starting at the bottom, her confidence and quick thinking made her stand out in the firm. The demands of their careers were intense, yet every evening they returned to one another, carrying both exhaustion and pride. For Ryan and Ariana, love wasn't just a feeling, it was a partnership, a promise forged in youth and tested in ambition. Madelynn Price entered Ryan's firm with polished confidence and a smile that turned heads. As the new PR specialist, she carried herself like she already belonged in the inner circle of his leadership team. She was sharp, articulate, and eager to prove her worth. But her interest in Ryan extended far beyond the professional realm. While Ariana trusted her husband completely, she couldn't ignore the way Madelynn's eyes lingered on him during events, or how she always found ways to insert herself into conversations that should have ended in the office. At first, Ariana dismissed it as harmless ambition, but soon Madelynn began weaving herself into their lives with carefully calculated precision. She volunteered to stay late with Ryan to wrap up campaigns, sent him after-hours updates that could have easily waited until morning, and most intrusively, called during dinner hours with problems only he could solve. What seemed like devotion to the firm was, in truth, an excuse to occupy Ryan's attention, pulling him away from the quiet evenings he cherished with Ariana. Ryan, blind to Madelynn's manipulations, only saw dedication. He praised her for her diligence, calling her a valuable asset to the company. Each time Ariana raised an eyebrow or hinted at discomfort, Ryan brushed it off as jealousy or overthinking. His work, his clients, his reputation, all of it seemed to grow more urgent under Madelynn's influence. She made him feel indispensable, needed, as though without his presence the entire operation would collapse. The effect on their marriage was slow, but devastating. The little arguments began first. Forgotten dates, unanswered texts, cold dinners left untouched on the table. Ariana's frustration boiled over in clipped words and silence, while Ryan defended himself with explanations about pressure and timelines. What were once small misunderstandings grew into late-night confrontations where neither side felt heard. Ariana wasn't naive. She knew Madelynn's schemes for what they were, transparent ploys to edge her out. But the deeper Ryan sank into his work, the less he seemed to notice. For him, it was about ambition and survival in the competitive corporate world. For Ariana, it was about watching the man she married slip further from their shared life, tethered, instead, to a woman whose ambition was masked as loyalty. And though she tried to hold their world together, Ariana could feel the cracks widening, thin lines turning into fractures, each one a reminder that love, no matter how strong, could still be tested by the subtle poison of ambition and betrayal. Madelynn Price had always known how to get what she wanted. Success in PR wasn't only about words and branding, it was about people, understanding their weaknesses and bending them in your favor. When she joined Ryan Cox's firm, she quickly recognized his potential. He wasn't just another ambitious executive. He was driven, brilliant, and already carrying the kind of charisma that made clients trust him without hesitation. And to Madelynn, he was the perfect prize. Ryan's marriage to Ariana was nothing more than an obstacle in her eyes, a detail to be worked around. She studied Ariana from afar, the polished junior lawyer who carried herself with quiet confidence, who always seemed to anticipate Ryan's needs before he asked. That very competence made Madelynn despise her more. Ariana was too strong, too put together. If Madelynn wanted Ryan, she would have to unravel that bond thread by thread. Her plan began subtly. She started with late-night meetings under the guise of urgent deadlines, carefully phrasing her emails to sound professional yet personal. She made sure her calls reached Ryan during dinner, not by accident, but by design, knowing that interruptions would chip away at the intimacy he shared with Ariana. She complimented him generously in the office, weaving admiration into every strategy session, making him feel like the center of the company's success. When Ariana's eyes flickered with suspicion, Madelynn savored it. It meant the cracks were forming. Each argument between husband and wife was another step toward her goal. Madelynn was patient. She didn't need Ryan to fall overnight. What she needed was for him to lean on her, to see her as the one who understood his ambition, the one who valued the sacrifices Ariana criticized. She learned his rhythms, the moments when his confidence wavered, the late nights when exhaustion made him vulnerable. That was when she offered encouragement, whispered reminders that he was indispensable, irreplaceable, brilliant. She positioned herself as his refuge from the nagging concerns at home, disguising manipulation as loyalty. In her mind, Ariana was fighting a battle she had already lost. Madelynn knew how powerful it felt to be needed, and she was determined to make Ryan depend on her more with each passing day. The wedge she planted between them was only the beginning, because for Madelynn, this wasn't just about work. It was about winning, and she never played a game she didn't plan to finish. Ariana wanted the evening to be special. She had spent days planning the small gathering, just family and a few close friends. The house smelled of rosemary and roasted chicken. Candles flickered softly against the walls, and laughter carried through the living room. For Ariana, it was a reminder that despite their busy lives, home could still feel warm and full of love. But when the doorbell rang halfway through the night, Ariana's smile faltered. Standing in the doorway was Madelynn Price, dressed elegantly in a deep wine-colored dress, holding a bottle of expensive champagne. "Ariana," Madelynn said smoothly, her lips curving into a practiced smile. "Ryan told me about the party. I thought I'd stop by." Ariana blinked, her chest tightening. "Did he?" Her voice was polite but cold, a razor wrapped in silk. She stepped aside because causing a scene in front of family wasn't an option, though every nerve in her body screamed against it. Throughout the evening, Madelynn floated through the room like she belonged, chatting with Ryan's colleagues, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, and brushing past Ariana with a smugness only she could detect. To everyone else, she was charming. To Ariana, she was an uninvited intruder, clawing her way deeper into their life. When the last guest had gone and the house fell quiet, Ariana finally let her guard drop. She turned to Ryan, arms folded. "Why was she here, Ryan? This was family and friends, not your office." Ryan sighed, already weary from the tension in her voice. "She said she didn't have many friends here in the city. I thought inviting her was the polite thing to do. She's part of the team, Ariana. She's helping the firm grow." "Polite?" Ariana snapped, her composure cracking. "She's not a friend, Ryan. She's not family, and she's certainly not welcome in our home for no reason." Her voice shook, not with weakness but with fury. "This is supposed to be our space, our life, And you're letting her walk right through it. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, frustration flashing in his eyes. You're overreacting. She admires the work I do. She supports it. Why can't you just see that? Ariana's chest ached at his words. She steadied herself, speaking with quiet firmness. Because I see what you don't, and if you don't set boundaries with her, Ryan, she'll keep taking more. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument they'd ever had. After the argument that followed the party, Ryan knew he needed to make things right. He hated the look in Ariana's eyes, hurt and frustration mingling with disappointment. So he arranged a quiet dinner date at one of their favorite restaurants, hoping to remind her of what they once shared before work, deadlines, and outside distractions took over their marriage. When Ariana arrived, she was still guarded, but the effort wasn't lost on her. The restaurant was softly lit, a string quartet playing in the corner, the low hum of conversations around them. Ryan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. I know I've been distracted, he admitted, his voice gentler than it had been in weeks. But I want us to get back to us. Tonight's about you and me. Ariana's shoulders eased, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to the man she fell in love with. But just as the waiter poured their wine, a too familiar voice pierced the moment. Well, isn't this a nice surprise? Both turned. And there stood Madelynn, perfectly styled in a sleek black dress, her eyes sparkling with false innocence. She carried herself as if fate itself had delivered her there. Madelynn, Ariana said tightly, her tone betraying no warmth. Ryan blinked in shock. What are you doing here? Madelynn gave a little shrug, sliding a strand of hair behind her ear. I was dining at a nearby table. Imagine my surprise running into you both. Ryan, I heard you mention dinner plans to your assistant earlier today, but I didn't realize it was here. She let the word hang, as if Ariana's presence were the unexpected part. Ariana's heart sank. She looked at Ryan, eyes narrowing. You told her about this? Ryan shook his head quickly. I didn't. I only mentioned to Daniel that I needed a reservation. He turned back to Madelynn, his tone firmer than usual. This wasn't meant to include you. Madelynn's smile faltered just slightly, though she masked it with practiced charm. Of course. I didn't mean to intrude, just thought I'd say hello. Still, her gaze lingered too long on Ryan before she finally walked away. But the damage was already done. The mood was broken. Ariana's chest tightened, the earlier warmth replaced by familiar doubt. She placed her napkin on the table, her voice steady but pained. This isn't about dinner, Ryan. It's about boundaries, and you don't seem to realize how far she's crossing them. Ryan exhaled, frustrated, torn between defending himself and acknowledging the truth. Ariana saw more clearly than he ever had. For 2 days, silence hung between Ariana and Ryan like a heavy curtain. She spoke when necessary, polite and measured, but withheld the warmth that used to flow so easily. Ryan noticed, of course, her distance was sharper than any argument, but pride and exhaustion kept him from pushing. He immersed himself in work, believing the storm might pass on its own, but Ariana had no intention of letting it pass. She needed clarity, she needed a plan. So on the second evening after leaving the office, she called her best friend Bridget. Bridget answered on the second ring, her voice carrying its usual mix of sass and concern. Okay, spill. I can hear it in your silence. You're furious at something. Ariana sank into the couch, pressing a hand against her forehead. It's Madelynn. She's relentless. She shows up at our home, our dinners, everywhere. And Ryan doesn't see it, or maybe he doesn't want to see it. I'm losing him, Bridget. There was a pause before Bridget's voice sharpened. You're not losing him. You're just letting her play a game you haven't joined yet. So, what do we do? Because you know I'm not about to sit back and watch this woman run wild in your marriage. A small smile tugged at Ariana's lips, despite her frustration. That was Bridget, protective, loyal, and always ready for battle. She's manipulative. Bridget calculated. Everything she does is designed to make Ryan depend on her. And if I keep playing the patient wife, she's going to wedge herself deeper. Bridget's laugh was low, dangerous. Then we stop being patient. We beat her. At her own game. Ariana's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. What do you have in mind? First rule of a woman like Madelynn: exposure. She thrives in the shadows, in the little manipulations Ryan can't see. We drag her into the light. Every text, every call, every little coincidence, we track it, document it. Then when the time is right, you don't just tell Ryan what she's doing, you show him, force him to face the truth. Ariana exhaled slowly, relief stirring for the first time in weeks. You think that will work? Oh, honey, Bridget said with a smirk Ariana could hear through the phone. It's not just about it working. It's about you taking your power back. She wants to play chess with your marriage? Fine. But she's about to learn she's not the only queen on the board. Ariana leaned back, determination hardening in her chest. For too long, she had watched from the sidelines as Madelynn tested the limits of her patience and her marriage. Now with Bridget by her side, she was ready to fight back, not with petty arguments, but with strategy. Madelynn had made the first moves. Now, Ariana was prepared to make the winning ones. Ariana had to go to Boston for a week-long conference. When Ariana returned home from her business conference, she was bone-tired, but eager to fall back into the comfort of her own bed and her husband's arms. Instead, what she found stopped her cold. On the nightstand, just inches from Ryan's watch, lay a delicate pair of earrings she had never seen before, and a small bottle of perfume, the kind Madelynn had once bragged about. Wearing? Her pulse quickened, a storm of hurt and fury rising all at once. She held the bottle in her hand as Ryan walked into the room, loosening his tie. Ryan, Ariana's voice trembled with restrained anger. What is this? He glanced at the items and frowned, genuinely puzzled. What are you talking about? Don't. Play dumb with me. She held up the earrings, her eyes burning into his. These aren't mine, and this perfume. Do you really expect me to believe it just appeared here? Ryan raised his hands defensively. Ariana, I don't know where those came from. You're jumping to conclusions. Her heart cracked at his dismissal. Don't you dare make me feel crazy. Do you think I don't see what's happening? Do you think I don't see her, slipping into our lives, taking up space that should be ours? Ryan's jaw tightened, his voice sharper now. This again. You keep insisting there's something going on when there's not. You've turned every dinner, every late night into an accusation. Madelynn is dedicated to the firm. Ariana, that's all. Ariana stared at him, the man she married now looking like a stranger. And what about me, Ryan? Am I not dedicated enough for you, or do you just prefer a woman who flatters you while undermining your marriage? Ryan faltered, but his silence was damning. What Ariana didn't know was that while she was away, Madelynn had played her part flawlessly. She had planted those earrings and perfume carefully, knowing Ariana would find them. She had whispered to Ryan in hushed tones about Ariana's growing distance, hinting that maybe Ariana no longer believed in his vision for the company. She's a lawyer. Madelynn had told him one late evening at the office, her voice dripping with concern. She'll never understand what it takes to build something like this. Not the way you do, not the way I do. She didn't push too hard. Just enough to stir doubts, to make Ryan question whether Ariana's accusations were born from truth or from jealousy. Now, standing in their bedroom, Ryan looked at his wife and felt torn in two directions, one pulled by loyalty and history, the other clouded by the lies Madelynn had skillfully spun. Ariana's voice broke through the silence, heavy with anguish. I won't let her destroy us, Ryan, but I can't be the only one fighting. Ryan exhaled, caught between disbelief and guilt, but his hesitation was all the confirmation Ariana needed. Madelynn was playing the long game, and in that moment it seemed she was winning. Ryan had always considered himself a man of reason. He built his firm on strategy, logic, and numbers, things that didn't waver under emotion. But when it came to Ariana, his heart and mind were no longer aligned. He sat alone in his office one night, staring at the papers Ariana had left on his desk. Divorce papers. She hadn't screamed, hadn't begged, hadn't even fought when she filed. She had simply looked him in the eye, her voice steady but wounded. "If you can't see me anymore, Ryan, if you choose to believe her over me, then I won't stay in a marriage where I'm invisible." The words echoed in his mind long after she walked away. At first, anger flared. Anger at Ariana for giving up so easily, anger at himself for not holding things together, and anger at the gnawing suspicion that maybe, just maybe, she was right about Madelynn. But then came doubt, the insidious whisper that Ariana had been too quick to leave, too unwilling to understand the demands of his career. Hadn't Madelynn said as much? Hadn't she warned him that Ariana's world was different, that she couldn't possibly grasp the weight of his vision? Caught between love and betrayal, Ryan refused to calls or texts Ariana. Days turned into weeks of silence, each one widening the canyon between them. That was when Madelynn stepped in. She played her part with precision. The first move was casual, and offered to accompany him to a charity gala where he would have otherwise gone alone. "You shouldn't show up without a date." "Ryan," she said lightly, touching his arm just long enough to make it linger in his mind. "People notice." The second move was softer. Late-night dinners she delivered straight to his office. Gourmet meals in carefully chosen containers, always paired with a smile that suggested she was thinking of him when no one else was. "You're working too hard," she chided one evening, setting down a plate of salmon and roasted vegetables. "You can't carry the company if you collapse from exhaustion. Let me take care of you, at least in this." Ryan resisted at first, insisting he was fine, that he didn't need anyone. But loneliness had a way of breaking even the strongest defenses. With Ariana gone and his pride bruised, Madelynn's presence began to feel less like an intrusion and more like a salve. Still, the conflict gnawed at him. When he closed his eyes at night, he saw Ariana's face, hurt, defiant, full of love she refused to let him squander. He remembered her laughter, her fierce belief in him when no one else had faith, and the way she used to fit against his side as if she belonged there. But then there was Madelynn, always perfectly timed, always ready with encouragement and admiration. She made him feel indispensable, like the man who could conquer the world without apology. The lines between right and wrong blurred until Ryan no longer knew who to trust. Was Ariana right, that Madelynn was the wedge tearing them apart? Or was Madelynn right, that Ariana had never been willing to stand by the demands of his success? Alone in his penthouse, Ryan poured himself another drink, staring out at the city lights below. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, not in business but in love. And while he wrestled with the storm inside him, Madelynn was already making her next move, sliding seamlessly into the empty spaces Ariana had left behind. When the divorce papers was ready to be finalized in court records, Madelynn nearly burst with triumph. For months she had bided her time, slipping into Ryan's life, cooking dinners, standing at his side during events where once Ariana had proudly stood. She had convinced herself that all her patience, all her careful maneuvering, had finally paid off. Ryan was free, and soon she believed he would be hers completely. But what Madelynn didn't know was that Ariana had never signed. The crisp white papers sat untouched on Ariana's desk at the firm, tucked beneath a stack of contracts. For 3 weeks they lay there, a constant reminder that although her marriage had fractured, she wasn't yet ready to declare it over. One evening, Ryan called her. His voice was steady but strained. "Ariana, what are you waiting for? You had The papers for weeks. Why won't you sign them? Ariana inhaled deeply, her gaze fixed on the unsigned pages. Because Ryan, 5 years doesn't just disappear with a pen stroke. I'm not ready to sign those years away so quickly. Not when I know there's more to this story than you're willing to see. Ryan's silence on the other end was heavy, conflicted. He wanted to demand she move on, to tell her she was dragging out the inevitable. But instead, he hung up with nothing more than a frustrated sigh. Ariana set her phone down, determination hardening in her chest. She had no illusions. Things between them were broken, perhaps beyond repair. But she also knew that Madelynn was the architect of their downfall. Every late-night call, every accidental interruption, every whisper in Ryan's ear had been designed to dismantle their marriage. And Ariana wasn't about to let Madelynn stand unchallenged. If Madelynn thought she was playing the long game, Ariana was prepared to play it longer. Bridget Lane had been Ariana's mentor since law, school, a sharp-minded woman with connections in nearly every corporate circle. She was also one of the few people Ariana trusted to see past the surface of things. Over coffee in a quiet corner cafe, Ariana confided everything. About Madelynn's intrusions, the planted jewelry, the doubts Ryan had swallowed whole. Bridget listened with a steady gaze, her hands folded around her mug. Madelynn's good, she admitted finally. Calculated, but she's also sloppy when she gets too confident. People like her always are. If you're serious about exposing her, you'll need patience. And proof. Ariana's eyes sharpened. That's exactly what I want. Proof that she's been manipulating Ryan. Proof that she's been undermining us from the beginning. Because I don't just want to walk away from this marriage. I want the truth to destroy her facade before she destroys anyone else. Bridget's lips curved into a knowing smile. Then let's give her enough rope to hang herself. You don't have to chase her. Just set the stage. Trust me, Ariana. I've seen women like Madelynn before. They always think they're untouchable. That arrogance will be her undoing. For the first time in months, Ariana felt a flicker of control return. She wasn't rushing to sign the papers, nor was she clinging blindly to a broken marriage. Instead, she was shifting the board, preparing for a longer, more deliberate fight. Across town, Madelynn was celebrating with a glass of champagne, certain that victory was hers. But Ariana knew better. The game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And with Bridget by her side, she was playing on her terms. Ariana Cox was a man who prided himself on clarity. In business, he could analyze numbers, weigh risks, and cut through noise with precision. But when it came to Ariana, clarity had abandoned him. It had been 6 months of silence, anger, and paperwork, and finally, the lawyers. His friends congratulated him on a clean break. Madelynn smiled at him as though she had just been handed the prize she'd been waiting for. And yet Ryan felt hollow, because Ariana hadn't signed. At first he told himself it was a legal delay, a technicality. But when he called her, the sound of her calm, unshaken voice lingered with him far longer than he expected. 5 years, Ryan. I'm not ready to sign those years away so quickly. The words hit him harder than he wanted to admit. Ariana had always been measured, steady, her emotions tempered with logic. If she wasn't signing, it wasn't hesitation, it was intention. She still had skin in the game, even if he didn't understand why. That thought haunted him. Late at night, when Madelynn dropped off dinner at his office, Ryan found himself distracted. She laughed too easily, pressed too close, her admiration, her poring over him in a way that once felt flattering. Now, it felt manufactured. You're doing incredible things, she told him one evening as she adjusted his tie before a fundraiser. Ariana never understood what it takes, but I do. You don't need someone who questions you. You need someone who believes in you, no matter what. Her words should have soothed him. Instead, they rang hollow. Ariana had always believed in him, hadn't she? She'd sat with him through endless nights at the kitchen table when the firm was just an idea. She'd brought him coffee during those first client pitches, smiling like she already knew he would succeed. Yes, she'd argued with him, challenged him, refused to worship him the way Madelynn did. But maybe that was the point. Ariana had wanted him to be more than just his ambition. The contrast gnawed at him. One evening, he opened the drawer of his nightstand, meaning to tuck away his cufflinks, and his eyes fell on the perfume bottle Ariana had accused him over. He froze, staring at it. He hadn't touched it since that night. He didn't even know how it had gotten there. But Ariana had been right. It wasn't hers. Madelynn had claimed ignorance when he asked about it, her wide-eyed denial too smooth, too convenient. He had believed her because believing her was easier than facing the alternative, that Ariana was telling the truth. And he had doubted the one person who had never lied to him. Now the bottle felt like evidence, not of an affair, but of a trap. Ryan leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. Doubt had become his constant companion. Doubt in Ariana for leaving. Doubt in Madelynn for always being exactly where he needed her. Doubt in himself for letting it all unravel. When Ariana refused to sign, she had said she wasn't ready to erase their years together. Ryan didn't know if she meant reconciliation, revenge, or something else entirely, but the certainty in her voice made him realize something. She wasn't done with him, and for reasons he couldn't explain, that thought both unsettled and comforted him. For the first time, Ryan began to wonder if he had been looking at the wrong woman all along. The fundraiser was meant to be another night of appearances, another evening where Ryan allowed himself to be paraded as the successful face of his firm. He arrived with Madelynn on his arm, her hand resting delicately against his sleeve as though she already belonged there. She sparkled in a gown chosen to draw attention, but Ryan's mind wasn't on her. Since Ariana's refusal to sign the divorce papers, something inside him had begun to shift. The certainty he once carried now felt like a burden, and the truth he had avoided was clawing its way to the surface. He still wanted his wife. The gallery buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses as donors admired the art, a collection of paintings done by the very youth the program supported. Ryan shook hands, gave his practiced smiles, let Madelynn chatter at his side. But then the room shifted. Ariana walked in. She wore a deep sapphire dress, his favorite color, the one he'd once said made her eyes glow like fire against her golden skin. She didn't look broken or uncertain. She looked radiant, composed, and utterly untouchable. Ryan's breath caught. For a moment the room disappeared. He couldn't hear the chatter, couldn't feel Madelynn's grip tightening possessively on his arm. All he could see was Ariana. Madelynn followed his gaze, and her stomach dropped. She had anticipated Ariana avoiding the event, too proud to show her face. Instead, Ariana had walked in like a queen reclaiming her place. Ryan excused himself before Madelynn could stop him. His stride carried him across the floor with a determination he hadn't felt in months. Ariana turned just as he approached, her expression unreadable, but her chin held high. "You look beautiful," he said softly, his voice lower than it had been in weeks. It wasn't a line, it wasn't rehearsed, it was raw truth. Ariana arched, a brow, her lips curving slightly though her eyes remained cautious. "Thank you, Ryan." For a moment they stood in the middle of the gallery, the tension palpable, eyes from across the room catching on them. Then Ryan did something that shocked even himself. "Dance with me," he asked, extending his hand. Ariana hesitated only a heartbeat before placing her hand in his. On the dance floor, the world seemed to fall away. The string quartet played, softly, and Ryan pulled her close, his hand steady at her waist, her other hand resting against his shoulder. They moved in sync as though no time had passed, as though divorce papers and accusations didn't exist between them. To the crowd, they didn't look like a couple in the middle of unraveling. They looked like two people who still carried 5 years of love in every step, every shared glance. And to Ryan, it felt like coming home. Madelynn watched from the edge of the crowd, her smile frozen, her nails digging into her clutch. Panic clawed at her chest. She had worked too hard, waited too long. She had convinced herself Ariana was out of the picture, but the way Ryan looked at his wife now, like she was the only person in the room, terrified her. Ryan leaned down, his voice brushing Ariana's ear. "Tell me the truth. Do you still feel it too?" Ariana's heart clenched. She wanted to guard herself, to remind him of the betrayal, the lies, the pain. But standing there in his arms, she couldn't deny the truth any more than he could. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible, "but feelings aren't enough, Ryan. Not anymore." Her words were a reminder that love still lived between them. But it would take more than love to rebuild what had been broken. Ryan tightened his hold, determination burning in his chest. For the first time, he realized Madelynn hadn't won. She couldn't, not if he still had a chance to prove himself to Ariana. And across the room, Madelynn knew. The game she thought she'd mastered was slipping from her grasp. After their dance, Ryan guided Ariana through the side door of the gallery, away from the eyes and whispers of the donors. They found a quiet hallway, dimly lit, lined with modern sculptures. Ryan kept her hand in his, reluctant to let go. "Ariana," he began, his voice low, urgent, "I don't want this to end. Not like this." Before Ariana could respond, the clicking of heels echoed against the marble floor. Madelynn emerged, her face twisted with fury. "So this is where you've hiding," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Ryan, what are you doing? We need to get back inside. People are noticing." Ryan turned, his jaw tight. "Madelynn, leave. I need to speak with my wife." Her laugh was bitter, mocking. "Wife? Don't you mean ex-wife?" She looked at Ariana with venom in her eyes. But Ariana's expression was calm, her chin high. "No," she said evenly. "Your information is wrong. Neither of us signed the papers. I'm still his wife." Madelynn's composure cracked. Her voice rose, trembling with rage. "Why not? She can't give you the life you need, Ryan." "I can. I can take you further than she ever could. I've stood beside you when she doubted you. Don't you see?" Ryan's eyes hardened, his tone icy. "Let's get something straight. I'm not sure what you've been telling yourself, but I have no desire for you, Madelynn, or anyone else. I still love my wife. Very much." The words landed like a thunderclap. Ariana's breath caught, and for the first time in months, her heart began to steady. Madelynn's face twisted, desperate. She spun toward Ariana, her voice shrill. "You planned this, didn't you? The fake divorce tonight? Just some elaborate trick to reel him back in?" Ariana stepped forward, her voice sharp but steady, each word cutting through the tension. "Yes, I forced your hand. You thought you were so clever, but I've known all along what you were doing. You were after my husband, and he was too blind to see it, so I gave you enough rope to hang yourself." Madelynn shook her head violently. "Lies. You have no proof." Ariana's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. "Oh, but I do. Mrs. Browning, our housekeeper, told me everything. You came to the house one afternoon, pretending you'd lost your bracelet. When she left you alone for 5 minutes, you planted those earrings and perfume in our bedroom. That was your mistake. You underestimated how well I know my husband. He has a tell when he's hiding something from me, and that night I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't lying." Madelynn froze, her face draining of color. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Ryan's chest tightened as Ariana's words sank in. The perfume, the earrings, the constant interruptions. He had defended Madelynn when he should have listened to the woman who had always believed in him. His voice broke with anger and regret. "You manipulated me. You nearly destroyed my marriage." Madelynn's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't of remorse. They were of frustration, of a plan slipping through her fingers. "I only wanted what's best for you," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Ryan stepped closer to Ariana, sliding his arm protectively around her waist. "What's best for me," he said firmly, "has always been her. It's always been Ariana, and nothing you could do will ever change that." Ariana looked up at him, her heart racing, but her smile small and sure. For the first time in months, she felt seen. She felt chosen. Madelynn let out a strangled sob, her mask shattering. With one last, furious glare, she spun on her heel and stormed back down the hallway, her heels echoing like the retreat of a defeated enemy. Silence filled the space she left behind. Ryan turned to Ariana, his eyes heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry for doubting you, for letting her get this close. I should have trusted you from the beginning." Ariana touched his cheek gently. "You were blind, Ryan, but now you see. That's enough for me, for now." They stood there in the quiet of the gallery hallway, two people scarred but still tethered by love, while the remnants of Madelynn's schemes dissolved into the night. The next morning, the atmosphere in Ryan's office was tense. He sat behind his desk, flipping through contracts, though his mind wasn't on the words. He knew Ariana was coming. She'd been silent since the gallery confrontation, but her silence now felt different. It wasn't distant. It was deliberate. When the door opened, Madelynn strode in with her usual confidence, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. She smoothed her skirt, adjusting her posture as if nothing had changed. "Ryan," she began with a practiced smile, "I thought we should discuss last night. I understand emotions were high." She stopped abruptly as Ariana stepped into the office behind her, heels clicking with authority. Ariana's presence was calm but commanding, her dark brown eyes locked on Madelynn like a hawk on prey. "You don't need to discuss anything," Ariana said coolly. "You're fired." Madelynn blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Ariana said, crossing her arms. "You're finished here." Madelynn's laugh was sharp, brittle. "You can't fire me. Ryan's the CEO, not you." Ariana's smile was razor-thin. "My husband may be the CEO, but I hold controlling interest in this company, and my family is the second-largest investor. That means your employment here exists only as long as I allow it. And I don't." Madelynn's face blanched, her confidence slipping. Still, she lifted her chin defiantly. "You think you can just throw me out? I'll sue this company for wrongful termination. I'll drag both of you through the mud." Before Ariana could respond, the door opened again. Bridget Lane walked in, a folder tucked under her arm, her expression calm and lethal. She set the folder on Ryan's desk, her eyes cutting straight to Madelynn. "Madelynn," Bridget said, her voice smooth as glass, "meet your problem. I'm the company's lead attorney, and I have all of your internal emails, as well as every text you sent from your company phone." She opened the folder and slid a document across the desk. "Including the ones where you explicitly stated your intentions to interfere with Ryan and Ariana's marriage, and how you plan to use your position here to make yourself indispensable to him. Care to explain that?" Madelynn's lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes darted between the two women, Ariana unflinching and triumphant, and Bridget poised like a predator with every receipt in hand. Ryan leaned back in his chair, watching the scene unfold, his chest swelling with pride he hadn't felt in months. For too long he doubted Ariana, let Madelynn's poison cloud his judgment. But here was his wife, standing in her full power, dismantling the very woman who had tried to break them apart. Ariana leaned closer to Madelynn, her voice low and precise. "You thought you could manipulate my husband. You thought you could worm your way into our life and take what was mine. But you underestimated me. And that," she straightened, "was your biggest mistake." Madelynn's bravado finally crumbled, her face twisted with rage, humiliation burning in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No," Ariana replied softly, almost kindly. "The only thing I regret is letting you get this far. Security will escort you out." Madelynn's heels clicked furiously against the floor as she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Silence filled the office, heavy but cleansing. Ryan rose slowly from his chair and crossed to Ariana. He reached for her hand, then pressed a kiss against her forehead, his voice hushed but full of sincerity. "That," he whispered, "is why I love you so much." Ariana's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "Then remember it next time you're tempted to doubt me." Ryan pulled her into his arms, relief flooding through him. For the first time in months, he felt whole again. The storm Madelynn had brought into their lives was over, and while there were wounds still to heal, the foundation of their love remained. They would rebuild together. The storm had passed, but the silence afterward was deafening. Madelynn was gone, stripped of her power, her schemes laid bare. Yet the damage she left behind lingered in the space between Ryan and Ariana. Love still bound them, but so did the memory of betrayal, doubt, and distance. Ariana knew that dismissing Madelynn wasn't the same as healing their marriage, and Ryan knew apologies, however heartfelt, wouldn't erase the hurt he had caused by doubting his wife. If they wanted to rebuild, it couldn't be on words alone, so together they chose the harder road. The first step was walking into a counselor's office, a neutral space where pride and defensiveness had no place. Ryan had resisted at first, uneasy with the idea of bearing his flaws to a stranger, but Ariana stood firm, her voice gentle yet unwavering. "If we're going to do this, Ryan, it has to be all in. No more half measures, no more blind spots." The sessions were raw. Ryan admitted how much his ego had been stroked by Madelynn's flattery, how ambition blinded him to Ariana's quiet loyalty. Ariana confessed the depth of her hurt, not only at his doubts, but at his failure to defend her when she needed him most. There were tears, long silences, and moments of defensiveness, but slowly, brick by brick, they began to dismantle the wall between them. Ryan learned to listen without deflecting. Ariana allowed herself to believe he was truly trying. The counselor reminded them of something simple but profound. Love is not the absence of conflict, it's the decision to fight for each other through it. Back at home, the healing continued in smaller, quieter ways. Ryan started leaving the office earlier, no longer accepting every late-night meeting as essential. Ariana noticed when he'd arrive at the dinner table on time, when his phone stayed face down, his eyes focused on her. In turn, Ariana began softening her guard, letting him back in piece by piece. She trusted her instincts again, paying attention, not just to his words, but to his actions. Ryan was careful, deliberate, proof by consistency. One evening, Ariana found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, clumsily trying to cook her favorite pasta dish. The sauce burned slightly, the noodles were overcooked, but when she laughed, Ryan smiled like it was the first time he'd heard her laugh in years. "I'll never get this right," he groaned. "Doesn't matter," Ariana replied, touching his arm. "You tried. That's more than enough." Intimacy returned not in a rush, but in whispers. A hand brushing against hers as they walked, a kiss lingering longer than it had before. Shared mornings over coffee where they spoke about everything and nothing. One rainy Sunday, Ariana curled up on the couch with a book, and Ryan joined her without a word, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you ever think," Ryan murmured, "that maybe this, us, going through all of it, was supposed to remind me of what really matters?" Ariana looked up at him, her eyes soft but clear. I don't think it was supposed to happen, Ryan, but I think it's what we do now that matters. He kissed her then, slow, unhurried, full of the love that had survived the fire. Moving forward wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Ariana's chest tightened at a late phone call, still days when Ryan feared he hadn't done enough to prove himself. But those moments no longer defined them. Instead, what defined them were the choices they made, daily, to stay, to trust, to forgive. Months later, Ryan surprised Ariana with something she hadn't expected. At the end of a long counseling session, he took her hand and slid a small box across the table. She opened it to find a new wedding band, simple, elegant, with a single sapphire stone. "I don't want to erase what we've been through," Ryan said, his voice trembling. "I want to honor it. This isn't to replace your ring. It's to remind us that we chose each other twice. And that makes us stronger than before." Tears filled Ariana's eyes as she slipped the ring onto her finger. She whispered the words she hadn't dared speak in months. "I believe you." And in that moment, Ryan knew they had not only survived Madelyn's storm, they had rediscovered the love that had first drawn them together all those years ago. The spring air carried the scent of fresh blossoms through the open windows of their home. A month later, Ariana stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the delicate fabric of her dress. It wasn't a wedding gown yet, but something about the soft white silk made her think of the first time she had walked down an aisle toward Ryan. Her lips curved into a smile at the memory. Ryan entered quietly, slipping his arms around her waist, and meeting her gaze in the reflection. "You're radiant," he whispered, pressing a kiss against her shoulder. Ariana laughed softly, her hand brushing over his. "If you want to see me in another wedding dress, we need to do it soon." Ryan frowned in mock confusion, tilting his head. "Why? We've got time." She turned in his arms, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Because before long my belly will be too large to fit into anything." The words hit him like a lightning bolt. Ryan's eyes widened, his lips parting as realization dawned. "Wait! Are you saying—" His voice cracked uncharacteristically, unsteady. Ariana nodded, her smile tender. "Yes, Ryan, we're having a baby." For a moment the world stilled. Ryan's chest swelled with emotions he couldn't put into words, shock, joy, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. His hands instinctively dropped to her stomach, even though there was no visible sign yet. "You're serious," he whispered, as if afraid the moment would vanish if he spoke too loudly. She nodded again, tears glistening in her eyes, completely serious. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her tighter than he ever had. "You've given me a second chance, Ariana, and now, this." His voice broke and he buried his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you." Ariana leaned back, cupping his face in her hands. "Stop saying that. We both made mistakes." "Ryan, but we fought for each other. That's what matters. This baby, it's our fresh start." He kissed her, slow and reverent, as though sealing a vow. Later that evening they sat together outside, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Ryan rested his head against Ariana's shoulder, his hand still protectively covering her stomach. "You, and no," Ariana teased. "If you really want to renew our vows before the baby comes, you'd better start planning fast." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not making the same mistake twice. This time I'm going to plan the wedding you want, with every detail perfect." "Careful," she warned playfully. "I might hold you to that." "I hope you do," he said, his voice soft but sure. As the stars began to prick the sky, Ariana closed her eyes and listened to the steady beat of Ryan's heart against her ear. After everything, the doubts, the betrayals, the near loss, they had found their way back to each other. Their love had been tested, but it had survived, stronger than before. And now, with a new life growing inside her, Ariana knew their story was only beginning again. one filled with the laughter of children, the warmth of family, and the unshakable bond of two people who chose, again and again, to fight for love. Ryan kissed her temple, whispering words that had become their truth. Always you, always us. And Ariana smiled, her hand resting over his. Together, they looked toward the future, no longer haunted by the past, but lit by the promise of what was to come. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tale. Support our channel with your comments and don't forget to subscribe.